Hello friends, Christian Carter with Radius Financial Group, and today we are talking about the NAR Settlement, which of course stands for National Association of Realtors, and we're talking about the VA loan, and more specifically, what veterans are allowed to pay for now that we're starting to work the kinks out of that massive NAR settlement. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, this is really, really good news, pretty much for one reason in particular, right? With the difficult housing market that's going on right now, at least the Veterans Administration made these changes so that the VA loan is now, more in line with other mortgage products out there, right? So this is really good news for veterans. Now, it's also important to note that while this is 99.9% probably going to be the rule, the VA still has to go through their rulemaking process and things like that. However, we are anticipating that this should take in effect come August 10th, 2024. So again, really good news. 99% of the way there. It's most likely going to happen. They just need to go through the VA's official process. So let's back up for a second real quick and talk about this NAR settlement, right? First of all, what does NAR stand for? It stands for the National Association of Realtors, right? And they recently just settled a lawsuit for $500 million. That's billion with a B. And essentially, this is what they settled for. Essentially, a bunch of sellers got together, right, and said that realtors were colluding and inflating the price of their commissions, right? Even though commissions for selling a home have been, between 5 and 6% of the sale price of the home for decades and decades and decades, way before the internet came about. But long story short, a bunch of sellers got together and said that realtors were colluding to keep to inflate the prices of commissions, even though this has been going on for decades. So what does this mean, right? Essentially, the sellers were mad that the sellers of the property had to pay both the commissions from the buyer's realtor and the listing realtor. So now we have a bunch of changes that are going to be, come about with the whole buyer's realtor, right? And how the buyer's realtor gets paid. So that is a quick overview. Final court approval, I believe, is sometime in November of 2024. But this NAR settlement looks like it's going to be the law of the land. So there's your quick background. So what does this have to do with the VA loan, right? So previously, the VA said that essentially buyers could not pay any commissions during a real estate transaction when they were the buyer, right? Because those commissions were normally paid by the seller, meaning the seller of the property would pay for essentially the sellers were mad that the sellers of the property had to pay both the commissions from the buyer's realtor and the listing realtor. So now we have a bunch of changes that are going to be, come about with the whole buyer's realtor, right? And how the buyer's realtor, buyer's agent, the buyer's realtor, as well as the listing agent, whoever was the realtor that was selling the home, right? The seller would pay both of those commissions. And it was actually a pretty good system. All right, so to break down this new VA news, I thought it would be easiest to go to the whiteboard because I love the whiteboard. So we're going to go over a couple things real quick, the nitty-gritty details on this good news put out to the VA. So without further ado, let's go to the whiteboard. All right, whiteboard time, our favorite part, right? All right, let's get into it real quick. So this new news will allow veterans to pay for buyer broker charges subject to these three things. Real quick, when I use the term buyer broker charges, that's essentially just the same as like a buyer's agent that you're using who you are paying, right? So buyer broker charges, just a charge that the buyer's agent is charging you, right? Or charging the veteran. So it's got to be subject to these three things, right? The home being purchased by the veteran is in an area where listing brokers are prohibited from setting buyer broker compensation through the MLS. This is a big one, probably the most important of these three, right? So essentially, if a listing agent is not allowed to set a commission through the MLS, the veteran is going to be allowed to pay for his or her buyer's agent, buyer's realtor, right? I hope that makes sense. All right, next two are pretty easy, right? Buyer broker charges are not included in the loan amount. Again, just like it sounds, the veteran can pay for any kind of, buyer's realtor charges out of pocket, but he or she cannot roll that into the loan amount. And then lastly here, charges paid by the veteran must be considered in determining whether the veteran has sufficient liquid assets to close the loan. Again, very straightforward here, but and kind of, unnecessary, this last one. But essentially, the veteran has to have the money in order to pay his or her buyer's agent, right? So if the veteran has $10,000 in the bank and his cash to close is, is $8,000, he can't then dish out an additional $5,000 for his buyer's realtor because he doesn't have the money to do so, right? Last one, again, kind of self-explanatory, but the veteran must have the money in order to pay for his or her buyer's agent, buyer's realtor. All right, two other important considerations that I wanted to touch on as well. An invoice is not required. We've been getting that question a lot over the past couple months. And then secondly, the VA will not treat the seller's payment of the buyer broker charges as a seller's concession, right? So if the seller of the home is going to pay for the veteran's basically buyer's realtor, we're not going to treat that as a seller concession. Hope that made sense. All right, before we go, we have two frequently asked questions that we've been getting asked a lot. So I just wanted to address them right here. First question is, okay, now that all this has been announced, can the veteran pay for any kind of buyer broker fees, any kind of buyer realtor commission right now? And the answer to that question is absolutely not, because this video is shot in July of 2024. Like we mentioned earlier in the video, this has an effective date of August 10th, 2024. So if you are watching this video prior to August 10th, 2024, the veteran cannot pay for any buyer-related buyer realtor commissions. But still a good question. All right, and the next frequently asked question that we've been getting a lot lately, can the lender, the mortgage lender, can they actually provide some sort of credit to the veteran to allow that veteran to pay for his or her buyer's realtor? And the answer to that question, unfortunately, is absolutely not. As we all know, that would be considered a thing of value, which is a RESPA violation. But unfortunately, mortgage lenders cannot provide any sort of credit in order to pay for the veteran's buyer's realtor. So, two frequently asked questions we've been getting a lot of lately. Hope that helps. Other than that, that's all she wrote. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I would love it if you can give it a big thumbs up. It really helps my channel. Speaking of my channel, if you do like the vast majority of videos that I put out regarding real estate and mortgages, I would love it if you could subscribe. And then, I guess most importantly, if you have more topics that you want me to cover, mortgage, real estate related, please leave it in the comments below. And I would love to shoot a video on that. Other than that, adios. See you in the next video.